Ryan was complaining about being forever alone when he heard identical voices behind him say, "We noticed you," and when he turned to find twin alien women looking at him like prey, he realized he had made a terrible, terrible mistake. He spun around to face Thessa's twins, Lyra and Syra Vel'Thane. The space station's corridors were already bustling with the sounds of other workers rushing from one job to another, but all Ryan could hear was his own heart pounding in his chest like it wanted out of him. "Ryan," said Lyra, her voice a smooth purr that didn't sound at all threatening, or so he thought, until she bared her teeth ever so slightly into a predatory smile. "Hi." He tried to back away from them slowly without appearing rude. His hand found the nearest wall and slid down it, leaning for support. "I think we need to talk." "We are here," Syra said softly, like an echo of Lyra's voice, but with a subtle edge in her tone that hinted at something more strategic than aggressive. Ryan felt trapped between them. He had never seen their kind so close before, and didn't know what was going on until the moment Thessa appeared next to him, looking concerned and slightly apologetic. "Ryan," she began hesitantly, "I need you to understand something." Her gaze flicked nervously from him to her sisters. The Vel'Thane twins were a fascinating species. They shared everything, including mates, which was common knowledge on the station. But Ryan had never imagined that their presence would escalate into this awkward situation. "Thessa," he whispered urgently, "what did I say?" Well, Thessa started, glancing at Lyra and Syra as if seeking permission to speak openly. Their identical nods were all the encouragement she needed. "In our culture, expressing loneliness is seen as a formal courtship declaration." Ryan felt his cheeks heat up as understanding dawned on him. He had joked about being alone forever in front of an alien coworker. Thessa was related to twins who overheard everything he said. "Wait," Ryan stammered, trying desperately to find the words that would undo what he'd done. I noticed you too." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes locking onto his, as if she could see straight through him with those violet orbs. She was inches away now, and Ryan had nowhere left to go. Syra moved in from the side, cutting off any escape route he might have thought of seconds ago. "We didn't realize it at first," she said softly but firmly. "You've been talking about loneliness for a while." Ryan gulped, his mind racing through all possible ways out of this situation. There must be some way to explain himself and make them understand that what he had meant was entirely different from how they were interpreting it. "Look," Ryan tried again, taking another step back, which didn't help since Syra mirrored him almost immediately on the other side. "I wasn't serious, Lyra put a hand up as if to stop any further protestation, and as from coming out of his mouth. Her face was unreadable, but her tone was clear and firm when she spoke next. "Ryan Cooper, you have made yourself known in our culture's most formal way possible by stating your loneliness in front of us." "Wait, we're not letting this go," Syra cut in with a smile that seemed to say, "This is the beginning." She took her hair out of its usual ponytail and let it flow down, adding something almost sensual about her presence. "We will make sure you understand our customs." Ryan felt his panic rising exponentially. He knew now he had made an irreversible mistake by talking in front of them. I didn't mean to do that," he stuttered out. Thessa looked uncomfortable, but continued bravely, as if she understood the importance of clearing things up between species who shared space together. "Ryan has always been someone who jokes about being alone," she explained gently to her sisters. But even in this moment, Ryan could tell there was no changing their minds based on Thessa's tone. Lyra and Syra exchanged a look that spoke volumes, some sort of silent agreement or plan between them. Then Lyra stepped closer still, making it impossible for him to escape without doing something drastic like running through the crowded station corridors, which would only make more people witness this bizarre situation unfolding around them. "Ryan Cooper," she said slowly and clearly, as if speaking directly into his soul, "you have initiated courtship by declaring your loneliness in public." Syra nodded eagerly from her side of him. "We will pursue you," she whispered seductively before adding, as twins, share everything. This was too much for Ryan to handle right now. Could feel the sweat dripping down the back of his neck, and between his fingers, where they clutched onto whatever surface had grabbed earlier when backed against the wall by these women. "Wait a minute," Ryan blurted out desperately, looking from one twin to another. I can't just," but as if reading him like an open book, or sensing his reluctance through some kind of empathetic bond they had developed in their culture, the twins simply smiled at each other and then backed down at Ryan. "Tomorrow will be interesting," Lyra said, with a predatory gleam in her eyes that sent shivers up his spine. "We have plans for you." With those chilling words hanging between them like an unspoken threat of unknown consequences to come, they turned around suddenly, almost as if on cue, and walked off down the hallway together side by side. Ryan stared after them for what felt like hours before he could make himself move again. As their footsteps echoed away and faded into nothingness, all Ryan could think was that somehow these aliens had taken his joke seriously, in a way no one ever would have back home on Earth. And now there wasn't much left to do except brace himself for the chaos they were about to bring down upon him. Ryan leaned against the wall of an unoccupied room nearby, trying to catch his breath and calm himself as he thought through what had just happened. He was alone in Hera, thankfully, and that gave him a moment's peace before dealing with whatever came next. His mind raced over potential solutions, but each one seemed worse than the last. There wasn't really any way out of this situation without causing even more trouble or hurting feelings across cultures. The only certainty now was that Ryan Cooper had just initiated something he never intended, a courtship declaration, in a culture where such things were taken very, very seriously. And with two formidable Vel'Thane twins leading the charge, Ryan took another deep breath and forced himself to stand upright again. He couldn't run from this forever. Eventually, he would have no choice but to face it head on. And somehow, despite everything that had just happened, a joke gone terribly wrong, found a small part of him curious about how things might unfold between them. But there was also terror at the thought of what could happen if they misunderstood his intentions any further than already done by now. With no other choice but to proceed, Ryan Cooper made up his mind he would have to figure out this alien courtship game before these twins drove him completely insane, or worse yet, if Thessa's sisters had their way before they claimed him as theirs permanently. The day after his encounter with Lyra and Syra Vel'Thane, Ryan Cooper found himself nervously navigating through the bustling corridors of the space station, trying to avoid the twins at all costs. He had barely managed a few hours of restless sleep, haunted by nightmares where he was relentlessly pursued by two identical blue-skinned women with matching violet eyes. He decided that his first task for the day would be seeking out Thessa Vel'Thane, their sister and his long-time co-worker. Perhaps she could help him understand what had happened. Her sisters were now acting as if Ryan had formally proposed to them both in a single, accidental moment of frustration. Ryan spotted Thessa on her way back from the lab where they worked together and quickly caught up with her. "Thessa," he began urgently, as soon as she turned around to see him approaching. "I need your help." She looked at Ryan curiously, but didn't seem entirely surprised by his request, though there was a hint of concern on her face that made him feel even more uneasy about the whole situation. "What happened with my sisters?" Thessa asked gently, halting in front of him so they could speak privately. "They mentioned something last night that left them quite excited, but also somewhat confused by your reaction." Ryan took another deep breath before explaining as clearly and calmly as possible what had transpired between the three of them the previous day. "I was just joking," Ryan confessed, his voice wavering with nerves. "I didn't mean anything by it. I know how serious these things are in Vel'Thane culture. I wasn't trying to propose or start some kind of courtship ritual. It's not my intention at all." Thessa listened intently as he spoke, her face softening slightly when she caught the desperation and genuine concern behind his words. "I understand that," Thessa assured him kindly, "but in our culture, Declaring loneliness is a formal statement for potential mates to notice you're ready for commitment. Ryan ran a hand through his messy hair with frustration. I can't believe this happened, he groaned aloud. How am I supposed to deal with them now? It's not your fault, Thessa said reassuringly. But now that it has started, y'all have to be prepared. Me sisters take courtship very seriously. Later on the same day, Ryan was already in high alert mode as he made his way through one of the quieter sections of the station's engineering corridor. It seemed like every shadow could hide either twin waiting for him. As if sensing this anxiety within him, Lyra suddenly appeared out of nowhere from around a corner and pressed herself up against the wall just behind Ryan, so she would be right next to him as he walked forward. You will choose me, she said firmly without preamble. I am more aggressive. Ryan spun around sharply at her words, but found himself unable to back away, since there was no space between them due to his earlier turn in place. Her silver hair cascaded over one shoulder, and the predatory glint in her violet eyes seemed even sharper now that they were inches apart. Wait, he pleaded desperately, raising both hands defensively, though it felt like a futile gesture against such an intimidating force field of energy from just being near this woman. Lyra cut him off with a hard look. Tomorrow is the start of my competition for you, she declared solemnly before stepping back and giving Ryan enough room to pass her by. Ryan hurried down the hallway as fast as he could without breaking into an outright run, leaving Lyra standing in his wake, but clearly intending on following through with some kind of unspoken plan. He was already dreading tomorrow's developments, even more so now after that encounter. As Ryan tried to find a quiet corner where no one would disturb him to think things over, a nearly impossible task aboard the crowded station found another unwelcome surprise waiting for him back in his quarters when he returned from work later on. Syra had been subtly laying down markers of possession around his space, placing carefully arranged piles of sweets, smelling herbs, and small trinkets with notes attached that read things like I am more thoughtful. Ryan's heart pounded wildly as he looked over the items left behind by Syra in various corners of his quarters. Each one seemed to whisper her name under breath, almost taunting him from every corner, reminding him she was just waiting for some formality to be completed before claiming him fully. Syra, Ryan sighed out loud into the empty room where he knew no one could hear but himself. What am I supposed to do? Despite his best efforts to avoid them both directly, it became clear that HFY road on this station now led straight back towards Lyra and Syra Vel'Thane and their unwavering pursuit of him. Ryan had long since stopped trying to take alternate routes. Each hallway seemed shorter as they appeared from all directions like ghosts out of his nightmares. He would have laughed if it weren't so terrifying. The joke about being alone forever was now a reality he couldn't escape, even through the confines of this metal and plastic space station. With no other options left in sight except facing whatever came next head on, Ryan Cooper resigned himself to dealing with what Thessa had called the chaos that her sisters were bringing down upon him. And despite everything, some part of him began to see glimmers of possibility amidst the terror. What could happen if these women misunderstood his intentions any further than already done? As he prepared for another day filled with unpredictable encounters and unexpected challenges ahead, Ryan knew there was no turning back. No would have to figure out this alien courtship game before it consumed everything about him. Ryan took a deep breath and steeled himself against the coming storm. And so began his unwitting participation in an interstellar courtship competition he had never intended, where every corner held not just possibilities, but also dangers lurking around each turn. Ryan Cooper clung to the dusty corners of a maintenance shaft in the bowels of the space station, hidden away from prying eyes and even more pressing questions. His heart pounded against his ribcage as he peered through a small gap between two metal panels, hoping for nothing other than an escape route to anything that would free him from this nightmare he hadn't asked for. 2 hours had passed since the last of Lyra and Syra's relentless pursuit ended in Ryan finding himself here. His breathing was shallow, every sound amplified to near-deafening proportions as he listened intently, waiting for any sign of them returning or discovering his hideout. Suddenly, a series of beeps from one of his wrist communicators startled him out of his vigilance. He reached for it with trembling fingers and opened the message thread. "Where are you? You need to pick someone. They're getting competitive." Ryan's eyes darted around in panic before he typed back hastily, "I did not mean to propose." The response came swiftly, almost mocking in its simplicity. "Tell that to the twins waiting outside," followed by a link to real-time surveillance footage of his quarters. Swallowing hard, Ryan accessed the feed. Lyra and Syra stood side by side at the entrance of his living space, each holding a small bouquet of flowers, obviously not just any flowers, but carefully chosen symbols of their affection and intent in Vel'Thane culture. They waved cheerfully into the camera, as if they hadn't noticed that he was hiding. Ryan quickly shut off the feed and retreated deeper into his secret refuge, pulling another blueprint to study from beneath his pile of hastily gathered supplies. He had been reviewing station schematics non-stop for the past few hours, searching desperately for an escape route or at least a better hideout than this cramped metal tube. Just as he was about to give up on finding somewhere else to go, Ryan noticed something odd in one part of the blueprint, a series of disconnected maintenance tunnels that led far beyond where any regular human engineer would ever have need to venture. A shiver ran down his spine at the idea, but also sparked hope. Perhaps there truly was an escape route hidden here. With renewed determination and trepidation, he began tracing out a possible path through these uncharted territories of the station. "All right," Ryan muttered to himself amidst the low hums and whirs around him. "Let's see if I can't find somewhere even more remote than this." He spent another half-hour studying maps until his eyes started crossing from strain, marking potential spots where he might be able to lose both Lyra and Syra for good. The plan was simple enough: sneak into one of these tunnels during a maintenance shift change, when security would likely be laxest, then make it as far away as possible. It seemed absurdly hopeful, but what other options did Ryan have? He had already tried hiding in his quarters, wandering the crowded corridors hoping to blend in, and none had worked. So this was either sheer lunacy or perhaps the best chance at avoiding an inevitable confrontation he truly wasn't ready for yet. As if on cue, another alert pinged through his wrist communicator. "Found something interesting about your new girlfriend's search," Thessa's voice chiming in casually over intercoms. "Turns out there's a whole database entry on Vel'Thane courtship practices you might want to review before the competition starts tomorrow." Ryan sighed and rubbed his temples, trying not to think too hard about how she had found such information so quickly after he'd mentioned these aliens existed at all. He opened her message, found it. "Read up if you can find time," she added almost reluctantly. The document contained pages upon pages of Vel'Thane cultural norms regarding courtship and mating rituals, none of which Ryan understood or wanted to follow, but figured knowing what they expected might help him navigate them better somehow. One section caught his eye, particularly the part about how in their society, once a twin initiates competition for a mate, the other automatically participates as well, since mates are shared. In essence, by making even one Vel'Thane interested in you, both twins became potential partners, whether they liked it or not. Ryan read this again and again, his mind spinning, trying to find some loophole that could free him from all of this madness before it went any further. There had to be something he was missing here. Surely there couldn't just be no way out. He sat back against the cold metal wall of his hiding spot, feeling utterly lost, as yet another message popped up on his wrist communicator. "Ryan," Thessa's voice was softer now, with concern mixed in despite her usually blunt demeanor. "You're not alone in this. We all know how weird things are going to get over the next few days, and I'm here if you need help figuring any of it out." The relief he felt from those simple words almost choked him up, but Ryan forced himself back into action mode, knowing she couldn't actually be much use unless he could figure something concrete out first. Checking his wrist communicator again for security schedules before anyone else woke up, Ryan decided now was the time to put his hastily planned escape route into motion. He needed to make one last push away from these two women who meant well in their own strange way, but were utterly uncomprehending of his terror and confusion at everything unfolding around them. The night was young. He hoped it would be long enough for him to find somewhere truly safe once more before dawn broke upon another day filled with unpredictable encounters leading directly back toward the twins waiting outside every single exit. Ryan clutched his wrist communicator tighter as he stumbled through a dimly lit corner of the space station's maintenance corridor. His heart was pounding against his ribs like a drum roll to some unwelcome beat, each thump reminding him that escape wasn't just from the twins anymore. It had become an obsession bordering on madness. Thessa's latest message flashed across his communicator. Found something interesting about your new girlfriend's search, Shed said. It was a reminder of how deeply entangled he now felt in this alien ritual, even with her subtle hints and warnings that went unheeded by the twins' relentless pursuit. The Vel'Thane courtship practices had only deepened his confusion. Ryan, Thessa's voice crackled over again from earlier, when she tried to offer help. Her tone was softer than usual, but still carried an underlying edge of urgency, as if sensing that he needed more than just information or a shoulder to lean on. You're not alone in this. We all know how weird things are going to get over the next few days, and I'm here if you need help figuring any of it out. Ryan's mind swirled with panic at her words, unable to shake off the mounting dread that tomorrow would bring more confrontations than he could handle. Yet somewhere deep within him, a flicker of hope stirred, an acknowledgement of his growing affection for Lyra and Syra, despite their terrifying intensity. Where do I even start? He muttered aloud, stopping in an empty maintenance room, as if he hoped the answer might magically appear before him. Before long, footsteps echoed through the corridor outside. Ryan's eyes darted around frantically. There was no hiding spot left within reach now that she had found his location. The door slid open to reveal Thessa standing with a mixture of concern and resolve on her face. Behind her stood Lyra and Syra side by side in their matching silver armor, violet eyes burning into him as if they could will compliance out of his resistance. Ryan, Thessa said softly but firmly, "Can we talk this through properly?" The twins exchanged a glance that spoke volumes without any words needed. They had cornered him. No more running or hiding would change the situation at hand. Thessa stepped inside, closing the door behind them to create an enclosed space where Ryan could no longer evade his fate indefinitely. The silence hung heavy in the air, like a weight pressing down on all of them. Finally breaking it, Lyra spoke up first with her usual directness. "We heard you joking about being lonely," she began slowly, as if trying not to misinterpret anything further despite their already deep confusion over human customs and social cues. "In our culture, initiating courtship means expressing such feelings publicly." Syra picked it up. Syra continued seamlessly from her sister's statement. "We took your declaration seriously because in Vel'Thane society, potential mates respond once they've been given clear signs of interest or loneliness." Ryan felt his stomach drop at their words. He had never intended to start anything so serious and binding within alien traditions completely foreign to him. Thessa translated between them. "They're trying to understand what you meant by your joke." "It was just a joke," Ryan said weakly, feeling the weight of misunderstanding crash down on him even harder now. "I didn't know it would mean something in another culture." Lyra's expression tightened with confusion and hurt mixed together. "You do not want us?" Syra chimed in, equally bewildered, but more composed under pressure. "Are we not attractive to you?" Ryan stammered for an answer as his brain raced through every possible response that wouldn't further offend their pride or misunderstanding. In a rare moment of honesty, amidst the chaos swirling around him, he blurted out without thinking noise, "I mean, you are terrifying and beautiful, and I haven't slept properly in weeks, because you're everywhere." The confusion on both twins' faces softened slightly as Thessa translated his awkward admission. Lyra looked to Syra with a shared nod before speaking again. "Terrifying is actually a compliment here," she explained gently, reaching out to place her hand over Ryan's shoulder despite the tension between them. Syra added, "And beautiful, Will. We hope that's true too." The room fell silent once more as Ryan processed their responses and realized just how far he had already stepped into this alien courtship without meaning for it to happen at all. Despite his panic rising anew from being forced to confront the reality of everything unfolding around him, a spark within him began to kindle. He found himself looking back towards Lyra and Syra not with fear, but with something akin to curiosity on, perhaps even longing beneath that initial wave of terror. I don't know what this means," Ryan admitted hesitantly, under their searching gazes. "But I think it's time we figure out together." The chapter ends here as specified by the prompt, setting up for potential developments in subsequent chapters regarding how Ryan navigates his growing feelings amidst cultural differences and misunderstandings with Lyra and Syra Vel'Thane. A&D Ryan stood rooted to his spot in the cramped office space of the station's maintenance bay, surrounded by Lyra and Syra Vel'Thane and a silent Thessa, who was doing her best to facilitate communication. The tension in the room was palpable, heavy with unspoken expectations and misunderstandings. Lyra stepped forward slightly, her violet eyes piercing as she tried to understand Ryan's mixed signals. "We heard you joking about being lonely," she began slowly, each word careful and measured. "In our culture, initiating courtship means expressing such feelings publicly." Syra nodded in agreement with Lyra's words. Adding more context, Syra picked it up. Her voice was softer than usual, but just as firm. "We took your declaration seriously because in Vel'Thane society, potential mates respond once they've been given clear signs of interest or loneliness." Ryan felt the weight of their confusion and the implications crashing down on him even more heavily now. He had never intended to start something so serious with a culture completely foreign to his own. Thessa looked at Ryan, her eyes apologetic as she translated between them. "They're trying to understand what you meant by your joke." "Honestly," Ryan said weakly, feeling the weight of misunderstanding crash down on him harder than ever before. "It was just thought a joke. I didn't know it would mean something in another culture." Lyra's expression tightened with a mix of confusion and hurt. "You do not want us," Syra chimed in, equally bewildered, but more composed under pressure. "Are we not attractive to you?" Ryan stammered for an answer as his brain raced through every possible response that wouldn't further offend their pride or misunderstanding. In a rare moment of honesty, amidst the chaos swirling around him, he blurted out without thinking noise, "I mean, you are terrifying and beautiful, and I haven't slept properly in weeks because you're everywhere." The twins' confusion softened slightly as Thessa translated his awkward admission. Lyra looked to Syra with a shared nod before speaking again. "Terrifying is actually a compliment here," she explained gently, reaching out to place her hand over Ryan's shoulder despite the tension between them. Syra added, "And beautiful, Will. We hope that's true too." Ryan felt his heart rate spike as he realized how far he had already stepped into this alien courtship without meaning for it to happen at all. Despite his panic rising anew from being forced to confront the reality of everything unfolding around him, a spark within him began to kindle. He found himself looking back towards Lyra and Syra not with fear, but with something akin to curiosity on, perhaps even longing beneath that initial wave of terror. I don't know what this means," Ryan admitted hesitantly, under their searching gazes. "But I think it's time we figure out together." Lyra leaned in, her silver hair shimmering slightly, as she studied him intently. "What if we gave you one chance to understand us better? Just one date?" Syra nodded eagerly beside her sister, adding with a soft smile that made Ryan's stomach flutter unexpectedly, "If it doesn't work out between the two of us and you still don't want us after this, we will stop pursuing." Ryan's mouth opened in surprise as he processed their offer. One chance to understand each other better? It seemed like an incredibly generous proposal, especially considering how they had cornered him before. Thessa, translated, the twins are willing to give Ryan one date. Ryan looked between the sisters and nodded slowly, his mind racing with all sorts of potential outcomes, but unable to think beyond that single chance. "One date," he repeated carefully. "If it doesn't work out, I'll stop." Lyra's predatory smile softened into something more genuine as she confirmed, "We will respect your decision." Syra added gently, her violet eyes warm and inviting, "It's the least we can do after causing so much confusion for you." Ryan sighed heavily, but felt a glimmer of hope mixed with his lingering fear. It was time to see where this could lead, or not. The next day found Ryan in an unfamiliar part of the station, standing outside what seemed like some kind of alien cafe or gathering place adorned with intricate patterns and colorful lights that flickered softly against their pale blue walls. He had agreed to meet Lyra and Syra here for their one date, hoping it might clear things up between them. Lyra walked in confidently from the opposite side, her silver hair swept upwards, revealing a striking profile as she moved gracefully towards him. Syra followed closely behind, but instead of closing ranks around Ryan like before, they paused at his sides with matching smiles that seemed almost conspiratorial. "Ready?" Lyra asked softly, extending an arm out to gesture inwards, where other aliens were already settling into their seats or hovering nearby. Syra chimed in quietly, "Let's give this a chance." Ryan nodded slowly as he followed them inside. The atmosphere was vibrant, with low murmurings and gentle laughter from the alien crowd, who seemed to be waiting for something significant to happen tonight. It felt almost celebratory. Lyra led him through rows of oddly shaped chairs that accommodated various species comfortably. Some were hugging soft cushioned seats, while others floated nearby on repulsors with ease. They found a semi-private corner, where Lyra motioned gently toward the two-seat pod that hovered above a small table. Syra settled in smoothly beside Ryan, her hand lightly brushing against his. As she did so, he could feel warmth radiating through the simple touch despite it being brief and almost accidental. Lyra seated herself opposite him with an elegant poise. "Tonight we'll show you our ways," she said softly. "We want to share things that matter to us." Ryan nodded slowly, swallowing hard as his eyes darted between them, both feeling a strange blend of nervousness, but also intrigue settling deep within him. The twins ordered something called flux gel from the hovering waiter bot, which arrived soon after, each serving in separate dishes arranged neatly before them. The jello-like substance pulsed softly, with bioluminescent hues reflecting off their pale blue skin as they picked up spoons made of shimmering metal and shared a look between themselves. Syra broke eye contact first to focus on Ryan. "This is our most cherished food," she explained, offering him one spoonful gently. The flavor was surprisingly pleasant. It tasted sweet yet tangy, with hints of subtle spices that tickled his taste buds in an oddly satisfying way. Lyra chuckled softly as Syra continued feeding them both bit by bit, while talking animatedly about their cultures, most beloved traditions, and holidays none more interesting than a festival called Twilight's Embrace, where everyone celebrates the bond between twins. Ryan listened intently, fascinated despite his initial wariness. As they talked and shared bits of flux gel together, Ryan found himself relaxing gradually under Syra and Lyra's gentle attentions. Laughter started to come more naturally, as jokes flew back and forth amidst explanations about their customs or quizzing each other on human practices that made them both giggle uncontrollably. He noticed too how knowing they looked sometimes when he laughed freely, something akin to pride reflecting in those violet eyes despite his previous attempts at running away from this very same fate. It was disconcerting yet oddly comforting somehow. By the time dessert arrived, an ethereal, swirling concoction of sparkling liquid that glimmered under alien light, found himself genuinely enjoying their company for what it was rather than fearing some trap or misunderstanding lurking behind every word and gesture exchanged. "Tell us about your family," Syra encouraged softly, once they had settled into a comfortable rhythm together. "We've heard bits here and there from Thessa, but we'd love to know more." Lyra nodded eagerly beside her sister. "Yes, please, share with us something personal." Ryan took another sip of the sparkling dessert before meeting their eyes seriously this time around. He hadn't expected much beyond a tense meal or awkward dance through customs he didn't fully understand tonight, yet here he was starting to open up and feel genuine warmth towards these sisters who had chased him relentlessly. "Well," he began slowly but firmly, "my family. They were the center of my life growing up." His voice softened slightly, recalling memories fondly. "But things changed when Dad died unexpectedly 2 years ago." Syra's eyes filled with understanding as Lyra reached out to rest a hand on his knee gently in support. I understand loss," she said quietly. "I miss him every day, but also feel grateful for the time we had together, and it made me appreciate moments even more now." Ryan took another deep breath, feeling lighter somehow despite opening up about such personal matters under alien gazes he still wasn't entirely comfortable with yet. Lyra's violet eyes softened further as she squeezed his knee briefly before withdrawing her hand. "We too feel grateful for our bond," she admitted quietly. Syra nodded beside Lyra in agreement. "It's what makes us who we are." Ryan felt a warmth spreading through him despite the initial shock and panic he had felt earlier. Maybe there was something more here than just cultural misunderstandings after all. The twins watched him with knowing smiles as they continued their meal, seemingly aware of his growing comfort around them, but respectful enough not to push too hard or fast for anything beyond mutual understanding at this point. As the night wore on and conversations flowed effortlessly between them over shared foods and stories, both personal and cultural, Ryan found himself laughing more genuinely than he had in years. The fear that used to consume him whenever they approached began fading away, replaced by an unexpected warmth and curiosity towards these sisters who were so different from anything human, but somehow managed to feel oddly familiar. The twins watched him intently throughout their dinner. Lyra's aggressive approach softened into something almost tender, while Syra's strategic gifts turned into heartfelt gestures that spoke volumes about her feelings. Both of them seemed acutely aware of his growing comfort and ease around them without being overbearing or intrusive. It was disconcerting how well they read him despite the language barriers, but reassuring in a strange way. Toothed twins were more than just aggressive pursuers. They genuinely cared beneath all their confusion and misunderstandings earlier on. They weren't trying to force anything upon Ryan beyond what he wanted himself, which made this entire situation feel less like some kind of trap after all. As desserts finished up and the night drew to a close with lingering smiles exchanged between them under bioluminescent lights dancing around their table. "Thank you," Lyra whispered gently when they stood up finally. Syra added softly beside her sister, squeezing Ryan's hand briefly before letting go respectfully for understanding. Ryan found himself nodding slowly despite the initial shock and panic that still lingered within him sometimes. He realized he had been forced into a situation where cultural misunderstandings initially made everything seem so terrifying, but strangely enough, he didn't mind as much as logic dictated. Their offer of one date, seemingly small at first glance, but potentially life-altering for Ryan's future aboard the station, it was an olive branch extended in good faith despite all previous confusion and panic. It might not solve every problem immediately, especially considering how alien their customs were compared to his own human ones, but there was something inherently honest about this attempt at mutual understanding that made everything seem worthwhile. "Thank you," Ryan echoed softly back as they departed the cafe together, feeling lighter than he had in days, despite all past fears. The twins watched him with those knowing smiles once more before parting ways, for now, Lyra leading Syra away gently, but not too far out of earshot. just yet to give him space, while still remaining close enough, should anything urgent arise. He stood there watching them disappear into the crowd, feeling a strange mix of relief and curiosity settling deep within his chest. The night had been unexpectedly nice, almost romantic, if one looked past all cultural barriers and previous misunderstandings. He found himself starting to like these twins more than perhaps even he realized. But the night had been unexpectedly nice. A cascade of shared laughter and soft conversations flowed effortlessly between Ryan, Lyra, and Syra as they lingered over their food late into the evening. The bioluminescent lights that danced around their table cast an ethereal glow on everything, making even the most mundane moments seem special. As desserts ended and the trio stood up to leave, Lyra whispered gently, "Thank you." Syra echoed beside her sister, squeezing Ryan's hand briefly before letting go respectfully for understanding. Ryan found himself nodding slowly despite the lingering shock and panic that still occasionally gripped him. He realized with a start that he had been forced into a situation where cultural misunderstandings initially made everything seem terrifying, but strangely enough, he didn't mind as much as logic dictated. Their offer of one date, seemingly small at first glance, but potentially life-altering for Ryan's future aboard the station, it was an olive branch extended in good faith despite all previous confusion and panic. It might not solve every problem immediately, especially considering how alien their customs were compared to his own human ones, but there was something inherently honest about this attempt at mutual understanding that made everything seem worthwhile. "Thank you," Ryan echoed softly back as they departed the cafe together, feeling lighter than he had in days despite all past fears. The twins watched him with those knowing smiles once more before parting ways, for now, Lyra leading Syra away gently, but not too far out of earshot just yet to give him space, while still remaining close enough should anything urgent arise. He stood there watching them disappear into the crowd, feeling a strange mix of relief and curiosity settling deep within his chest. The night had been unexpectedly nice, almost romantic, if one looked past all cultural barriers and previous misunderstandings. He found himself starting to like these twins more than perhaps even he realized. The next morning, Ryan woke up feeling oddly at peace with the situation that had plagued him for so long. He showered quickly before heading out into the bustling corridor of the space station in search of coffee and a chance encounter with Thessa. Thessa was already there when he arrived, sipping from her own cup as she looked over some data on her tablet. She glanced up at his approach and grinned widely. "Good morning, Ryan. How did it go last night?" Ryan took a deep breath before sitting down across from her. "It went better than I expected," he admitted with a wry smile. Thessa's grin widened as she leaned forward curiously. "So you think this was just an accident? A misunderstanding that could be easily cleared up?" "No," Ryan said honestly, running his hand through his hair nervously. "The twins are really trying to understand me and what I want. It's not like some kind of trap." Thessa's eyes sparkled with amusement. "We know. Why do you think I arranged the date?" Ryan groaned loudly, slapping a palm to his forehead. "This was a setup from the beginning?" "Perhaps," Thessa admitted playfully, shrugging her shoulders casually, as she continued speaking over sips of coffee. "You said you were lonely before this began. And now?" Ryan asked hesitantly. Thessa's expression softened into something warmer and more genuine than he'd ever seen. "Now you are not." Ryan blinked rapidly at the sincerity in Thessa's tone, suddenly feeling a pang deep within his chest, a mix of confusion and surprise. It was terrifying to admit out loud, but he was starting to like it. "Are we done playing games now?" Ryan asked quietly after several moments of uncomfortable silence settled between them. Thessa laughed softly. "You are welcome," she said simply, nodding once firmly, as though this were some kind of unspoken agreement. She stood up quickly then, collecting her things and leaving without another word. Later that day in the station's mess hall, Ryan was surprised when Lyra suddenly appeared beside him while he ate lunch alone at his usual spot by a window overlooking the vast expanse of space outside. Her eyes met his with an intensity that made his stomach flutter nervously, even as she leaned close to whisper something softly into his ear. "Would you like us both, Ryan?" Startled and taken aback by her boldness, he could only stare back at Lyra, who waited patiently for a response without breaking eye contact. Syra soon joined them quietly from behind, standing beside her sister with arms crossed protectively over her chest, as if she were waiting to see how this would play out. Ryan felt his heart pounding wildly in his ears. It was the moment he'd been dreading yet hoping for since all of this had begun. To be honest, he didn't know what to say, but looking at both their hopeful faces made him realize just how much they truly cared about him beyond any cultural norms or misunderstandings. "Ryan?" Lyra prompted again after several long moments passed between them, her tone soft yet still urgent. Swallowing hard against the lump forming in his throat, Ryan nodded slowly yes. Instantly both twins' faces lit up with joyous smiles as Syra leaned forward gently to kiss him briefly on each cheek, while Lyra wrapped an arm around his waist, pulling him closer into a tender hug that felt right despite everything. "We accept your courtship," they declared in unison as soon as she let go, still holding on to his hand firmly between them. "As our culture allows." The rest of the station seemed relieved once news spread quickly. No longer did their coworkers need to watch helplessly from afar during what had become known universally around here as the galaxy's most awkward chase. The relief was palpable, but so too were lingering questions and uncertainties surrounding this unusual union. Meanwhile, Ryan found himself adjusting rather swiftly into a new normal despite all initial shock. Lyra still cornered him in hallways on occasion, though now for kisses instead of threats, while Syra continued leaving heartfelt gifts scattered throughout his path along with love notes that made his heart flutter each time he read them aloud to Thessa later. "Why do they keep following me?" Ryan complained one day when the twins showed up unexpectedly at a meeting he was attending, causing him to blush furiously under their gazes before shuffling uncomfortably away once it ended abruptly due to everyone else's giggles and snickers. Thessa laughed openly then as she walked beside them down corridors back towards engineering, where all three of them worked together. "You said you were alone forever," Thessa reminded gently with a wink. "Now you will never be alone again." Ryan thought about it for several long moments after that statement, the weight of her words sinking heavily into his chest and heart as he realized just how true this was becoming despite all fears initially. He liked it more than he ever expected to admit out loud, but it still felt terrifying on some level too. Ryan Cooper had always prided himself on independence and self-reliance. Being suddenly swept up in a relationship with two women from an entirely different culture seemed like the very definition of chaos compared to his usual orderly life. Yet as days turned into weeks, he found that perhaps this was exactly what he needed all along, but never knew how much until now. There were still plenty of bumps and misunderstandings ahead, but they navigated them together. Lyra's direct approach softened towards something almost tender, while Syra's strategic gestures grew more heartfelt with every passing day. And most importantly, he no longer felt alone, not even when he worried about all upcoming challenges or potential conflicts arising between their cultures. Because now there were two sets of eyes watching over him, two pairs of hands guiding his way forward, and one warm heart beating alongside his own that accepted everything despite all differences and fears. That was terrifying, but Ryan realized with a startling clarity as he stood in the mess hall, surrounded once more by those same twin smiles staring back at him expectantly. He liked it.